What is up? I am back and thank you for your patience. Before starting this review, a big shout out to whoever put Anthrax on the soundtrack. That was awesome. So around 27 years have elapsed since the first adaptation of It, one of renowned novelist Stephen King's most prominent books. That inaugural adaptation came in the form of a 1990 TV miniseries starring Tim Curry. So technically this means that the 2017 film out in theaters is the only attempt to bring the novel to the big screen. Obviously one film isn't enough to cover over 1,100 pages worth of material, so a sequel has been planned. I've never read this colossus of a novel, so I'm going to be judging it as a standalone film. This film takes place in the small fictional town of Derry, Maine in the summer of 1989. The meat of the action revolves around a group of unpopular youngsters who call themselves the Losers Club. Following the unwitnessed murder of the group leader Bill's younger brother George at the hands of an evil sewer-dwelling clown named Pennywise, Bill and the gang begin experiencing some horrifying visions of the clown along with manifestations of their fears. And as the youngsters consolidate the pieces, they learn of an old curse on the town. You'd think that the scariest part of this film would be Pennywise along with his creepy incarnations, but in actuality it's really the adults. Think about it, the grown-ups in our lives, particularly our parents, are supposed to be guiding lights, right? But instead over here we've got people like Beverly's father, who the film implies is sexually abusive. We've got Bill's father, who is cold and emotionally distant following the disappearance of George, and Eddie's weird controlling mother, who puts him on a strict regimen of placebo pills and renders him a hypochondriac. And of course the abusive father of Henry Bowers, the leader of the bullying trio. Not only are these grown-ups being harmful to the well-being of their children in their own way, they also appear very out of touch with the world and blind to the significant virtues of life. With that being the case, what would adulthood for these kids entail in such a big and scary world that has a sort of malicious penchant for running over people and being relentless? I ask this because this is the true nature of this earth. Such grim futures are very real and aplenty, and needless to say, much more so than creepy shape-shifting clowns. So ultimately, it is really more of a coming-of-age story about facing one's consternations. Defeating a sadistic and homicidal clown that embodies their deepest fears gives these characters the fortitude to tackle this world head-on. The novel itself is quite long on account of its cultivation of the Loser Club's group dynamic in conjunction with the apprehensions and internal lives of each character. That's an enormous amount of complex material to cover, and there lies a bulk of this film's challenge, getting it right in just 2 hours and 15 minutes. Well, actually maybe half, because there's a sequel that's planned, and it, for the most part, manages to do that quite well. What I really appreciated about the screenplay was its understanding of the loquacious jocularities and trivial idiosyncrasies of childhood bonding. It knows that youngsters need to be youngsters before growing up, and this in turn allows these young actors to revel in the catchy banter that actually ends up resonating on a comical and somewhat emotional level, though it may just appear as juvenile on the surface. From the assorted manner in which these kids approach problems to their initial reactions when they befriend Beverly, who's the only girl in the group, the characters have distinctive personalities and are very, very identifiable. However, for me, the characterization was more satisfying for some characters than others. From what I saw, Richie, Eddie, Ben, Bill, and Beverly were given the most screen time. The generated chemistry and camaraderie is very palpable, and the progression of the relationship is smooth. As for Mike and Stanley, they are likable, they are heroic, but for the most part they're downgraded to background status, so the actions that they undertake don't really register at the same level as those done by other characters. As for Swedish actor Bill Skarsgård, he nailed it as Pennywise. This guy had to fill in the ginormous clown shoes of Tim Curry, who scared away a generation of kids with his performance. I don't know about you guys, but I think Bill Skarsgård surpasses Tim Curry in every way. He just vanishes into the role and makes it his own. Skarsgård assumes childlike quirks to extract the apprehensions of the young cast, and his voice, it exudes a sort of lilting element that lures kids to their doom, and that's where it's undermined by his ferocious barbarity. Give him a round of applause, folks, he's good. So all in all, I thought It is a very good example of a modern horror flick that actually works. It's really more about the journey than the destination, and more about the characters rather than Pennywise. With its genuine humor and visual allusions to late 1980s entertainment, I think it allows the viewer to sort of long for the innocence and serenity of childhood. And as William Bibbiani of IGN puts it, this film takes us back to that naive mentality and then rips us apart limb from limb. I think he also notes that it's effective on account of children's stronger emotions because they're experiencing them for the first time. It isn't perfect and it isn't exactly the scariest of horror movies, but it is very well executed, very well acted, beautifully shot, funny, and emotionally resonant. If you're a fan of horror films that put a greater emphasis on the characters, then I think you're really gonna have a good time with this one. So I'm gonna give it an 8. So these are my thoughts on It. What did you think of the film? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you like what I do, give me a like, hit that big subscribe button, stay tuned, and I will see you on the next one.